3, 2.
Hello again. Welcome to another edition of Media Watch. I'm your co-host, Eric Tait.
I'm
sorry.
I'm Raymond Peterson.
And
our
I'm Alan
guest today.
Alan Singer, Dr. Alan Singer, is one of our longtime Media Watch supporters, and he often guests in person. And because he's educator, blogger, tweeter, sometimes hip-hop artist, but actually one of the best social studies individuals on the planet, and he's the teacher who teaches other teachers how to teach social studies. Is that good enough?
That's much better than I deserve. Much better than I deserve.
This is brought to you by the good graces of Manhattan Neighborhood Network and EVT Educational Productions, and we're pre-taping the Wednesday before the Monday we air. Welcome, Dr. Singer. Alan, good to see you again. Raymond, we don't know what's going to be in the news, but we know what's been in the news, and the reason we've got Dr. Singer guesting is because a number of issues all conflate into one story. Charlottesville white supremacists, Donald Trump attacking NFL, primarily black players. We got all these Confederate statues that need to go, and there'll be discussions on why they need to go and why they're really just phony history, but Dr. Singer will be the expert to tell us more about that. So anyway, how do we want to jump into this? Because the president has been tweeting with the NFL players nonstop for the last 3 days, and it will probably continue because the athletes are not taking this lying down.
Well, I have to tell you, first I have to confess that every morning when I wake up, I check the latest Donald Trump tweets. It's my morning entertainment along with my coffee. And then I tweet them back. And what I do is I put a meme together. And so like this morning, I memed him back on a tweet. What I get is I have the image of the Pittsburgh Penguins, the hockey team.
Right.
And because he announced that, the Golden State Warriors aren't coming, the Pittsburgh Penguins are coming. And it's because they're 100% loyal Latvians and Finns and Swedes and Canadians and Russians. 2/3 of the team are not Americans. And of course, there are some Americans on the team and they're white. But they're going to be loyal and they're going to come.
Well, the memory serves me correctly because I'm not a big hockey fan. Ray, you probably do more hockey than I do.
No, not really.
The
I'm
Canadians,
not a big sports guy.
The Penguins are at least 50% Canadians, at least, right?
I think so.
If not
I'm not a
more.
big hockey fan.
I would think so, yeah.
So,
They don't have enough ice around here.
And the Canadians are very polite people. And so they'll probably, just like their president, Trudeau Prime Minister came down and was very cordial to our president. I'm sure those players will be cordial to this president. However, tell me a little bit about the tweets over the past weekend, which would be the previous weekend when our Monday show airs. But he got into a big tweet storm because of the NFL taking a knee protest. LeBron James.
Yeah. Steph Curry.
Should we backtrack over some of what that exchange was, or does anybody have it off the top of their head?
No, that's not what I have up here.
I can give you a couple of quotes because in the previous Sunday's sports sections, it was Sports Sunday dated September 24th. There was a Sports of the Times columnist by the name of Michael Powell, whose headline was "The Provocateur President Meets Athletes' Resolve." And it was very interesting that some of the quotes and tweets that he quoted was the NBA point guard Chris Paul, with everything that's going on in our country, why are you focused on who's kneeling and visiting the White House? Stay in your lane. And then to which LeBron James added his own message, "You bum," at Stephen Curry. Where's my pickup? Yes. Curry, 30, already said he ain't going. Going to the White House was a great honor until you showed up. So LeBron James and Steph Curry and a few other athletes were not happy about this Twitter war that the provocateur president, as Michael Powell called him, and the pickup after the fold, the headline was, "The provocateur president meets the resolve of socially aware athletes." So yeah, the lone protest that Colin Kaepernick started when he took a knee, which was slowly not fading but not really gaining much momentum, all of a sudden has taken off full-blown just because Donald Trump decided to call the NFL players sons of bitches. Boom.
What was very funny is Kaepernick's mother said, "Well, that must make me the bitch."
Made me one proud bitch.
Yeah.
That's the response
saw
that's
that.
coming out of people when. So the interesting thing, Raymond, we've had this discussion before about why you honor the office of the presidency, why you, no matter who's in it, why you have to try your best to be an upstanding American, no matter who's occupying the White House. And Trump has tried to spin this battle with the NFL by staying on his bully pulpit in the Rose Garden or wherever, talking about how ashamed he was because these athletes, predominantly black athletes, were protesting the national anthem and the flag. And of course, the press is letting him get away with this spin about how ashamed he is. As a longtime member of the press, who's not in an active day-to-day newsroom and not on cable television, but with this little minor platform that I have, let me just say to you folk out there, the fact that Donald Trump is talking about how ashamed he is at these athletes not being patriotic, etc. I am so ashamed that a draft-dodging, 5-time deferment heel spur guy who spent his college career at military school playing all kinds of sports is now occupying the White House and talking about patriotic people when he was so unpatriotic as to dodge the draft during the Vietnam War. So that is a personal shame that I feel that this country is represented by that dotard, as the North Korean individual called him. And if you look up dotard, it means something about a senile old man who doesn't know up from down or whatever. But I am fully ashamed that that is who's supposed to be the president of this country.
Well, I agree with you 100%, but you know this whole thing with the NFL, it's a diversionary tactic. And, it serves two purposes for him. It's a diversionary tactic to keep everyone's mind off of what the real issues are. And number two, it feeds his fan base. It rallies the support that he loves. It gives him the cheers and the accolades that he demands. People are following him. They believe him. They love him. And that's what he's doing. I don't think he cares one way or the other. I don't think he's aware enough of the world in general to give a damn about anything.
Okay. The interesting thing about it is you can let him spin it his way, or you can get to the issues behind the stories.
Not as long as everybody's concentrating on this NFL thing, though.
Well, okay, let's deal with that NFL thing, because my pet peeve with the mainstream media is they're hung up on NFL and they're not hung up on the reasons for the protests. They're letting him spin it about anti-patriotic, anti-flag, anti-national anthem. But the bottom line, Alan, you can attest to the fact that these protests are in a long historical line of athletes protesting what this country has done to and for or against black people down through the years, from Jackie Robinson to Kurt Flood. But you're a historian, while we are media news people. From your historical perspective, that issue behind the protests, speak to that.
All right. I think actually there are a number of very important issues here. The first is that Twitter has become part of the media. And Trump has made very clear that he uses Twitter to reach an audience because of the fake news. And
so-called fake news.
So-called fake news.
So
And
he created his own news.
so he creates his own news. So it very much there has to be addressed what role Twitter plays. Twitter is actually considering having an experiment expanding the length of tweets so that it could play that role. So that's the first, the role that Twitter has played. The second thing is, because of his use of Twitter, these have become presidential documents. Just last night, he deleted his some tweets where he had supported the losing candidate in the Alabama election, primary election, because he didn't want to be associated with being a loser. And what people have said, but no, these are presidential documents.
Hey,
you just can't delete them anymore. So those are two very real issues that are facing us. Another one, and this is what you're talking about, Raymond. Right. What he's made the issue, the NFL players, an issue is to take the issue off of race and racism in the United States. You know, and you see it on Fox News where they, well, these are multimillionaires. They're not. They should love their country.
Rich black athletes.
Right.
We don't like black people being rich, much less being famous and rich.
But these are people who put their own wealth on the line to defend people who could not defend themselves. So that the issue of race and racism has kind of been pushed aside by focusing on, you know, where the players should be protesting. And that's what you're talking about, and that's a big concern. He has been able to do that. But the other thing is, you're saying he reaches out to his base. This is not about reaching all people. This is about inciting racial division in the United States to appeal to a particular segment of the population. I listen to FAN and ESPN Sports Talk and Radio, and what you get is overwhelmingly white call-in speakers are talking about how this is so inappropriate to protest. Trevor Noah was really good on this one the other night. When Trevor said, well, where is the right place to protest? In your bedroom? You know, maybe Rosa Parks, instead of sitting down on the bus, should have went home and sat down in the living room. But what these people have attempted to do, these athletes, is to take issues and bring them to a broader public. And I have to thank them for that, because otherwise it could be shunted aside. You know, LeBron James is a very big hero. Steph Curry is a great hero. And by them taking stands, they've brought the issue to the forefront. And what Trump has tried to do is to take it away from race and racism and make it, you know, with the privilege of the football players.
Yes, but there's also a free speech component to this, right? So now, Raymond, you've got to take on the NFL, the national anthem, we kneel, we don't kneel, which actually collides with free speech. So give us the background, because like before we hit air.
According to the NFL rule book, players, let me
Just quote
read
it.
this,
Yeah.
yes. Quote, the national anthem must be played prior to every NFL game, and all players must be on the sidelines for the national anthem. During the national anthem, players on the field and bench area should stand at attention, face the flag, hold helmets in their left hand, and refrain from talking. Their home team should ensure that the American flag is in good condition. It should be pointed out to players and coaches that that we continue to be judged by the public in this area of respect for the flag and our country. Failure to be on the field by the start of the national anthem may result in discipline, such as fines, suspensions, and/or the forfeiture of draft choices for violations of the above, including first offenses.
Okay. So
Now, but we don't, as you brought up, we don't know when that was added. Now, the bylaws were amended in 2006. Whether or not this was added at that time or was a pre-existing clause, I don't know.
but they didn't start playing the national anthem until the 70s, right?
This is true.
Okay. So the NFL has been in existence since 1920 what?
1920s, the first team.
So-
Okay. So as this country has gotten more jingoistic or into more wars, its sports establishment has become more flag waving and anthem conscious, evidently, because it certainly wasn't there in World War I. It definitely wasn't there in the Spanish-American War. But that's being part of the bylaws. That means every individual who takes a knee, who may not have even read the bylaws when they signed their contract, are supposedly bound by those bylaws. So they are not only risking whatever endorsements they may have, they are risking the fact that they actually could be disciplined. Doesn't say you'll be fired or you'll be
No, it does
dismissed.
not.
It just says it'll be treated as some serious offense, or
Also,
implies.
it doesn't say will be disciplined. It
That's
says
right. Maybe.
Maybe.
disciplined.
There you go.
So it is up to
There
the
you
league
go.
to decide,
What
and
to
the
do.
players have a right to say, "I'll take the fine."
There you go.
I
All
did the crime,
That's free.
take the-
that's
take the
free
fine.
speech.
Yep, that is free
And
speech.
since one of the teams themselves took a vote, management included, that we're just not going to be out there for the playing of the national anthem, the team has violated the NFL bylaws willingly. And I'm pretty sure the owners actually know the bylaws. So management has made a decision that, yeah, maybe this bylaw rule may not be one that we want to actually enforce to the full.
Well, they lose their players. They're going to lose all their players if they start protesting and they
might.
start penalizing.
They might. The interesting thing is, I don't know if the NBA has similar bylaws, but the
don't
NBA
know.
players are coming out in full support of the NFL taking a knee. Baseball is a little slower,
Yeah. Well,
but-
baseball's always been a little slower.
but to continue with the conflation or the correlation or of the three issues that we talked about discussing. We're talking about the fact that Donald Trump will tweet against these NFL players about their, quote, lack of patriotism, but he will not tweet about the white supremacists who killed this young lady in Charlottesville.
Absolutely.
I haven't seen one.
No,
have
no,
we
no.
seen one tweet about
No,
that young lady
and
losing
in
her life?
speech, he equated all the protests. All the protesters were involved, and he did not specifically condemn the white supremacists. And when he was pressed, he leaned that way, and then he later said, "No, all the protesters."
He rescinded it again. Right. So a similar story was when Jamel Hill of ESPN decided, well, this guy who can't really condemn these racist people for, one, causing the death or actually being the proximate cause of the death of a young lady. He basically is the de facto leader. He is a racist. He's a white supremacist. And because private contract, ESPN bylaws or whatever, that was a violation of that as well. And so she took a lot of flack, and the White House that called for the firing of the NFL player called for the firing of Jamel Hill. So, but I didn't see them calling for
That's a federal offense, by the way.
What's a federal offense?
For a public official to call for the firing of anyone, a corporate firing of anyone.
Oh, that I didn't know.
I mean, he may get fired.
There's a law that says you cannot
No.
publicly call for the firing of somebody. Could you don't even call it up? I'm going to believe you. Let's figure out a way. You already looked it up.
I've read it more than once. I've read it more than
well,
once.
who's going to file the charge against this man for making that?
The Attorney General.
I don't think Jeff Sessions will.
Oh, could a private citizen do it?
I think a private citizen could. Well,
Okay.
no, private citizen cannot sue the president.
No, it didn't say sue. Says file a grievance for violating of the law.
Well, then I guess anybody can.
I think maybe somebody should look into that.
A couple of things you said, I think really I want to comment on. One is I am reminded of Martin Luther King's letter from the Birmingham jail, where King is in jail and he's writing to the ministers in Birmingham, and really is saying, look, I understand your criticisms of me, and I plead guilty to the things that you said, but sometimes you have to stand up for justice and what's right.
Yes.
And that's what these players are saying. They are not denying that they broke the guidelines. What they are saying is sometimes you have to stand up for what's right. And I think that's very, very important. There was a tweet going around on the Twitter internet, what would Dr. King have done? And Dr. King frequently took a knee because he was a minister, and he would get down on his knee and he'd pray. And so I think taking a knee has a long tradition in the civil rights movement. But the other thing that scares me, and this is the thing you're talking about, what Trump has done, is just It's Pandora's box. Once you open the box and let out the evil spirits, they are let out. And we're seeing that not just in Charlottesville, we're seeing that in Alabama. You know, they had a very right-wing appointed senator, and he was being challenged by even further right-wing religious fundamentalists.
Judge Roy
Moore.
What's his name? Moore, right.
Yeah, and Moore was the one that he wanted shower law in Alabama, though he called it biblical law. I mean, you know, the United States, everybody complains that shower law is insane because it brings religious principles into the law. And this guy is talking about Christian fundamentalist intrusion into law, which has no place in the United States Constitution.
Oh, that's the guy who put up the
Ten
Ten
Commandments.
and the Attorney General who said that's illegal. You got to take that down.
He refused to affirm same-sex marriages, though the Supreme Court of the United States ruled that they were legal. So he was a judge violating the law. Yet, once Trump stirs up the race and the racism in Alabama, he defeats the right-wing guy. So the lunatic defeats the less lunatic guy. Because once you open up Pandora's box and you stir up the racial animosity, you can't control it.
Well, look, the reason why the white supremacists in Charlottesville says, oh, we don't have to wear the hoods anymore, and they said that. They said, our guy's in the White House. That's another quote from the white supremacists in Charlottesville. So Jamel is not far off when she says this is a right-wing supremacist guy in the White House, because the supremacists claim him and say he will never, ever disown us. And guess what?
He hasn't so far.
That's almost a direct quote from either the KKK Grand Wizard, wasn't it David Duke? He will never disown us, or another one of those grand wizards of whomever of the KKK. But I'm paraphrasing, but if I went back far enough, I could get you, it's close enough to verbatim. He will not disown us. And they were right. Donald Trump has yet to disown the white supremacists, okay? So yeah, he's now the de facto, and we've said this at a previous show, he is the de facto leader of the white supremacists in this country. He tries to not go there, and every time he does and goes, oh, well, it was just once, oh, no, it was both sides. He always goes back to
good people on both sides.
Good people on both sides, right? Okay? Good people.
The other thing about the knee and about the NFL players, and it's also related to the issue of the statues.
Okay. Oh, we got to get on the statues.
Because so much has been erased from American history that
people
are so unaware of things. And you know, there are statues of genocidal maniacs. You were talking about Sheridan, who was by your house, who just committed genocide against Native Americans. There's this guy Sims, whose statue's on 103rd Street, who did experimental surgery on enslaved African women.
The doctor,
the doctor,
the gynecologist guy, right?
You know, we have the number one high school in the city of New York is named after the Governor General of the Dutch colony, who was the largest private slaveholder in the colony and an avowed anti-Semite. Peter Stuyvesant.
Right,
so
right.
We don't even know the history of these things. And what's happened is that the statue debate and the debate over people protesting at the games has at least opened up, so people are now beginning to look at what is the history of the United States.
Well, I'm glad you mentioned that, because you know our big thing, Ray and I both worked on Then I'll Be Free to Travel Home.
Yes.
And that's that historical arc that deals with slavery in this country, North and South, folks. You have to understand all 13 colonies practice slavery. Now, they'll teach you slavery about just south of the Mason-Dixon line, but Dr. Singer's got a curriculum that he's put together about New York and slavery. I believe the correct title is New York and Slavery, Resistance, and
Complicity and Resistance.
Complicity and Resistance. And the complicity part, folk, is as big, if not bigger, than the resistance part. Because, as Dr. Singer can attest, one of our mayors wanted us to secede with the South. Okay, what was his name?
Oh, Fernando Wood. Fernando Wood.
Mayor of New York City during the Civil War wanted the city of New York to secede from the Union in support of the Confederacy.
Now, I actually have two books. One is called New York and Slavery, Time to Teach the Truth, where I mostly look at the issues where the city was complicitous with slavery. The slavery in New York State to 1827. Financial institutions, corporations from the city are financing the transatlantic slave trade illegally up into the Civil War. And what you have anti-black riots in the city in 1863. And as you
riots.
said, well, I have a new book coming out with SUNY Press in the spring, and it's called New York's Grand Emancipation Jubilee. This focuses much more on the battle to end slavery.
In New York State.
In New York City, New York State, because black and white abolitionists from New York played very prominent roles in the struggle to end slavery. I mean, Frederick Douglass lived in Rochester, New York. Henry Highland Garnett was the minister of a church that was at the Presbyterian Church in Soho.
Right here in New York City.
Yes.
Right.
So New York is a very prominent role. As a matter of fact, in Metrotech,
The Tappan
in Brooklyn,
Brothers
Yeah,
were
Tappan
big
Brothers.
abolitionists right here in New York.
Yes, and they organized the defense for the Amistad, and they were wanted dead or alive in the South.
Right, the Amistad group of rebelling slaves who took over the ship, which the very badly done Steven Spielberg movie on that particular takeover became a courtroom drama that was boring as hell. But it's
So
okay.
the opening scene is very dramatic.
And then we go into a courtroom drama
Yes.
as opposed to what were they suffering and what was that rebellion all about? That would have been a more enjoyable movie. But anyway, I always go back down that road. But to get back to the statues, because I really want to, because we're going to be running out of time real soon. The Charlottesville protest was supposedly in defense of the Robert E. Lee statue.
Yeah.
But basically, it was just an excuse for the neo-Nazis and the KKK to come and chant. What was that phrase? You will not replace us.
Jew will not. That was anti-Semitic as well as anti-black.
You will not replace us. Jew will not replace us. And so it was basically a targeted demonstration to say we are here and we're pushing back. And so that brought the statue discussion into the forefront.
Yes.
And so for us, we said we would do more on it, and so let's do a little bit more on it today.
Well, again, Mayor de Blasio has
In New York.
setting up a commission in New York to investigate our statues, and there are a lot of them that need to be investigated. I mean, the people have been demonstrating up by 103rd Street, across the street from the Museum of City in New York, where the Sims statue is, and Sims was the doctor who did the experimental surgery. But there are, in Fort Hamilton, in Brooklyn, there are streets on the fort named after Robert E. Lee and Stonewall Jackson, who were traitors to the United States. And city council members in New York are demanding that those be changed, and Congresswoman Clark of Brooklyn wants them changed. So there are just a whole slew of statues and monuments, street names across the city that should be investigated. One of them that always strikes me most, I grew up on 170th Street in the Bronx. And we used to go to what we called the 167th Street Park to play ball. And we didn't know the park had a name. It was 167th Street because that's where it was. It was right by Yankee Stadium. Turns out that the name of the park is the John Mullally Park. And it's named after him because he was part of the Tweed Ring that made a fortune buying up land and selling it to the city to make parks. Mullally was also indicted in 1863 for inciting the anti-black, anti-draft riots in the city of New York. He was found not guilty. He was actually, I think the case was even dismissed, but he was indicted. There just wasn't enough evidence to prove that his incendiary columns in the metropolitan papers were responsible. But so we have a park in the Bronx, in a largely African American Latino community, that is named after the person who incited the riots that led to the death of over 100 people.
We've probably got a heck of a lot more than that, and there are streets as well. But I actually think I believe we started at 47, so I think our 27 minutes or 28 minutes is probably up, right?
Well, okay. Well, I'd like to remind everybody, though, that it was said on Twitter and said on Facebook that thinking that the NFL protesters are protesting the flag or the national anthem is like thinking that Rosa Parks was protesting public transportation.
Yes.
Oh, with that,
That's one of the best analogies
with
I've ever
that,
heard.
I'm going to say this has been Media Watch. I think we're long out of time, over time, but if we're not, so much the better. And I'm Eric Tait.
Alan Singer.
And I'm Raymond Peterson.
And we'll catch you the next time, folks.